Good afternoon, and thank you to everybody for joining today's webinar on the 2025 Boundary and Annexation Survey. My name is Mike. I'm a geographer in the Geography Division of the Census Bureau, and later today we'll be joined by some of my colleagues. But without any further ado, let's get things started. And thank you to all of you for attending today. So today we expect our webinar to run about 2 hours. We know it's a long time, so it's broken up into two halves. We want to ensure we cover everything you need to know about the Boundary and Annexation Survey and how to respond. I'll begin our webinar with an introduction to the Boundary and Annexation Survey. We commonly also refer to that as the BAS. So if you hear me call it, if you hear me say the BAS, that's just in reference to the Boundary and Annexation Survey. So this will include information on how to participate, BAS agreements, and the BAS state certification program. We'll then show you how the BAS website and demonstrate how to review boundaries and how to complete the annual response form. In the second half of the presentation, my co-workers and fellow census geographers will provide demonstrations of our digital response methods, showing you how to submit updates using both our Geographic Update Partnership software, commonly referred to as GUPS, and ArcGIS. We'll conclude the webinar with a walkthrough of how to submit boundary updates. Please feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar via the Q&A functionality in WebEx. And Census Bureau staff will be monitoring the Q&A window throughout the webinar and answering your questions in real time. Excuse me. Lastly, you'll receive an evaluation link at the end of today's webinar. We'd really appreciate your feedback so we can continue to share webinars that are helpful and useful for our stakeholders. If you have any suggestions for us on how to improve today's presentations, please let us know and we'll be happy to review the feedback. All right. Before we start talking about the Boundary and Annexation Survey, let's talk briefly about census geography. The Census Bureau's master address file and topologically integrated geographic encoding and referencing system, often referred to as the MAF-TIGER system, contains over 14 million unique geographic areas comprised of legal, administrative, and statistical areas, including but not limited to areas like counties, incorporated places, school districts, and census tracts. The MAF-TIGER also contains legal boundaries for approximately 40,000 tribal, state, and local governments. The MAF-TIGER system contains over 7 million miles of roads and includes MAF structure points or lat-long coordinates for over 94% of the nation's residential addresses. In addition to the Boundary and Annexation Survey, the School District Review Program, often referred to as the SDRP, the Participant Statistical Areas Program, often referred to as the PSAP, and the Redistricting Data Program are opportunities to update legal, administrative, and statistical geographies. The data collected through each of these geographic partnership programs excuse me, helps to form an accurate geographic framework for the Census Bureau's statistical data. Participation in the geographic partnership programs helps to ensure the accuracy of our geography. If you have any questions about any of our other programs, we'd be happy to put you in touch with the correct individuals at the Census Bureau to help you get some information. All right, so now it's time to talk about the Boundary and Annexation Survey. The Boundary and Annexation Survey is an annual opportunity for tribal, state, and local governments to submit boundary changes such as annexations, de-annexations, corrections to spatially incorrect boundaries, name or description changes, legal status updates such as incorporations, disincorporations, mergers, or consolidations, as well as updates to census-designated places. The Census Bureau conducts the Boundary and Annexation Survey to fulfill the agency's responsibility as part of the National Spatial Data Infrastructure. The Office of Management and Budget, Circular A16, designates the Census Bureau as the lead federal agency for maintaining national data about legal and statistical boundaries. The Census Bureau conducts BAS to fulfill this responsibility and to ensure the boundary data is current and accurate. Information collected through the Boundary Annexation Survey is uploaded to the Census Bureau's website through TigerWeb, shapefiles, and geodatabases. This data is then passed on to the USGS National Map and data.gov. Each of these services provide an open data source for federal, state, and local government agencies, as well as research institutions. This legal boundary data collected through BAS contributes toward a geographic framework that helps accurately tabulate data for our various censuses and surveys. The Decennial Census, the American Community Survey, and population estimates and the Population Estimates Program are just a few of these programs that benefit from this data. Excuse me. So now we'll talk a little bit about the benefits of participating in the Boundary and Annexation Survey. Participating in BAS allows tribal, state, and local governments to confirm that all legal boundaries in the Census Bureau's MAF-TIGER system are current and accurate. These updates contribute to establishing the housing and population counts within a government and serve as the foundation for good decision-making for tribal, state, and local governments across the country. More importantly, BAS ensures that communities receive their share of the more than $2.8 trillion of federal funding allocated annually for health, welfare, infrastructure, education, and other federal programs and services. Excuse me. So who can participate in BAS? Each year we invite all active, functioning legal governments to participate in BAS, totaling nearly 40,000 tribal, state, and local governments included in the program yearly. These governments include federally recognized tribes with reservation and or off-reservation trust land, states, counties, or county equivalents such as parishes and boroughs, minor civil divisions like towns and townships, and incorporated places such as cities and villages. We maintain program and organizational contacts for all eligible governments. This includes a BAS contact, which is the Census Bureau's primary contact for all BAS-related correspondence, and the contact that will receive all survey materials. Additionally, if a government does not have a BAS contact, we'll reach out to a local planning GIS department to establish one. Otherwise, the tribal chair or the highest elected official will receive all correspondence and survey materials. All right, now we're going to talk about what is called CBAS agreements. So we understand that not all governments have the resources to respond to BAS, as access to geographic information systems, imagery, and GIS professionals or planners is not the same throughout the country. So to help, we offer both state and county level agreements to make participation in BAS easier for everyone. We refer to these as consolidated BAS or CBAS agreements. CBAS agreements benefit all parties involved, including many smaller governments that may not have the time, resources, or technical expertise to respond. CBAS agreements help facilitate the sharing of information between the Census Bureau and state and local governments, reduce duplication of effort and costs, and help to ensure the collection of complete and accurate geographies through the Boundary and Annexation Survey. Excuse me. The Census Bureau maintains state agreements with interested state governments where there are laws in place requiring local governments to report boundary changes to a designated state agency. To facilitate an agreement, a state should have laws in place that require their governments to report changes in boundaries to a designated state agency. The Census Bureau would work with that agency directly to receive the boundary updates captured annually. All right, now we're going to continue talking about CBAS state agreements. The Census Bureau currently holds state agreements with 16 states. This includes Alaska, Arkansas, Delaware, Georgia, Iowa, Kentucky, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, Washington, and Wisconsin. We also work directly with the Puerto Rico Institute of Statistics to receive boundary updates for its municipios, barrios, and barrio pueblos. State agreements for Delaware and South Carolina were recently finalized and took effect in the 2025 BAS. We are currently working with North Carolina on a state agreement and anticipate that going in effect for the 2026 BAS next year. You can view all of our agreements in the 2025 BAS viewer located on the BAS website, and we'll be providing a demo of this later on in the presentation. And please excuse me, please contact us if you want to learn more about our Bass state agreements or have interest in establishing an agreement. So in addition to state agreements, there's also county agreements. The Census Bureau also offers county agreements to counties or county equivalents that are interested in submitting boundary changes on behalf of the governments within their jurisdiction. Local government participation in the county agreement is optional. Here on this slide, we have an example from Jefferson County, Colorado. Jefferson County participates in a CBAS agreement. They decided they want to take over that responsibility for all local governments within the county. Within that county, you have Golden City, which participates in the agreement and allows the county to respond for them. However, the nearby city of Lakewood decided that they have the resources to respond. So even though they're within a county that participates in a BAS agreement, they chose not to participate in the CBAS agreement and respond to BAS on their own behalf each year. We currently maintain county agreements with 374 counties across the country, and you can visit the 2025 BAS Viewer to determine if your county holds an agreement or if your municipality is under a county agreement. If your county is not in an agreement and you are interested in establishing one, please contact us at geo.bass@census.gov. In turn, we will email you a form to complete, which requires you to enter your contact information and a list of the municipalities in your jurisdiction that you want to participate. If you are a municipality that wishes to be part of an existing agreement or to be removed from one, contact us and we'll either add you or work through whatever scenario you want to get through. All right, so what's next for CBAS agreements? The state or county holding the CBAS agreement will begin reporting responsibilities the following BAS cycle. Once the CBAS agreement is in effect, the general purpose local governments included in the CBAS agreements will no longer receive BAS notifications. Instead, the highest elected official receives notification that the agreement is in effect, provides information on who the agreement is with, and lists contact information for the individual that should be contacted about the boundary updates that need reporting to the Census Bureau. It is important to verify the accuracy of the Census Bureau's boundaries and make sure all of the boundary changes are reported to the agency, department, or individual responsible for providing the updates to the Census Bureau. The state or county needs this information to make sure that they provide a complete inventory of the updates back to the Census Bureau. All right, so now we're going to take a moment, and the next couple of slides we'll discuss state certification for the Boundary and Annexation Survey. State certification is an opportunity for state agencies to verify that BAS updates were reported in accordance with state laws. This is what ensures the accuracy and legality of all boundary changes and legal statutes in our database. Excuse me. During state certification, each governor designates a state certifying official, or SCO. The SCO is responsible for reviewing changes reported during the previous BAS cycle and certifying those changes. The SCO can also submit updates or corrections as needed. Please note that this is a separate program from BAS and participation is optional. The state certification program is paused for the 2024-2025 update cycle, and we hope to restart the program again in late 2025 or early 2026. Excuse me. All right, so now we're going to get into it and talk about responding to the Boundary and Annexation Survey. So here I'll highlight some important dates for Boundary and Annexation Survey. The BAS kicks off shortly after January 1st each year. Boundary updates provided through BAS each cycle must be in effect on or before January 1st to be reported in the current survey year. Legal boundaries, or those boundaries changes made through a legal act, such as an annexation, that are submitted by March 1st are reflected in products such as the American Community Survey and Population Estimates Program data, and in the next year's BAS materials. Legal boundary updates submitted by May 31st will be shown in next year's BAS materials, If time permits, boundary corrections returned by this date may also be shown. So BAS begins each year with a kickoff email to all tribal, state, and local governments. The email provides survey information, action steps, key dates, and a link to the online BAS annual response form and webinar information. We kick off each year by sending out the annual response email to all eligible governments. This email notifies governments of the upcoming BAS cycle and provides instructions on how to participate. The online BAS annual response form can be accessed from the email you received earlier this month or on the BAS website, and we'll provide a demo of the BAS website just a little later on in this presentation. But if you go to the BAS website, you'll be able to respond through the Respond to BAS link. The online form allows BAS participants to access tools and resources to review your government's legal boundaries, indicate if there are boundary updates, census designated place updates, or street feature updates, indicate your preferred submission method for reporting updates, provide updates to your current BAS contact, provide updates to your either tribal chair or highest elected official contact, and also register for a webinar. This is one of the 3 webinars that we're doing, but there's 2 more to register for if you also want to attend those. All right, now we're going to talk about the annual response form. So the best way to respond to BAS is using the online BAS annual response form. A link to the response form can be found in the email notification sent earlier this month. And as I just mentioned, it can also be accessed through the Respond to BAS link on the BAS website. So the first thing you got to do when you go to the annual response form is enter in your BAS ID or your government's name. Next, you'll review your government's name and type. Updates can be made if needed. So next, you'll review your boundaries using TigerWeb, BAS partnership shapefiles, or PDF maps. It is important to review your boundaries prior to responding if there are any changes to report. Even if your government did not have legal changes during 2024, it is possible that older legal changes may need to be reported, or there may be other boundary corrections needed to align the Census Bureau data with your government's data. So after reviewing the boundary data, if there are boundary updates to report, select yes, we have boundary changes to report. If there are no boundary updates to report, you should select no, we do not have boundary changes to report. The next slides will demonstrate the next couple of slides will demonstrate what a government does if they do in fact have changes to report. So you'll select your submission method. Your options include the BAS Partnership Toolbox, GUPS Web, GUPS Desktop Download, or paper maps. We'll provide more information about each option in the coming slides. Next, you'll want to review and update the contact information for the highest elected official or the tribal chair, as well as the BAS contact. And you can make updates as needed. Maybe just the phone number changed, or maybe just the address changed, or something like that. After you've finished updating the contact information, you'll be prompted to enter in any government websites that are associated with your government. And that will just help us if there's any additional research that we have to do to process your submission. After that, you'll receive, it'll pop up a page that says thanks. So once the contact information is submitted, you'll be directed to the thank you and next steps screen. As you can see, there's a link to the BAS website, which I'll go over towards the end of this presentation. And on this page, there's also a link to register for an upcoming BAS webinar. Once the online form is submitted, the data is captured and sent over to the Census Bureau. This generates an automated email, which will be sent to you, and also an automated email that's sent to us to know that the new contact information or the annual response form has been submitted. And then if you do choose to register for a webinar, this is the page that you will see, and you'll be able to enter in your information and select which webinar you'd like to sign up for. Alrighty, so enough about the annual response form. Let's talk about boundary review for a little bit. So in the previous slide, we touched on the importance of reviewing your boundary before providing a response to the Census Bureau. So here is an example that highlights the importance of reviewing the Census Bureau's current boundary data prior to responding online. So on the map, the blue line represents the boundary that the Census Bureau had on file for this government as of the 2021 BAS. The BAS contact reported that there were no changes that year. Let's see, all right. In the 2022 and 2023 BAS, the government annexed, or in 2022 and 2023, the government annexed a significant amount of land, but did not respond to the 2022 or 2023 boundary and annexation survey. As a result, these annexations were not added to the Census Bureau's database, and the boundary data on file remained unchanged. In 2024, the new BAS contact did not review the current boundary the Census Bureau had on file prior to completing the annual response form. Since there were no annexations on file with the government's records for that year, they reported no changes. Because the government did not review the current boundary data on file before reporting changes to the 2024 BAS, the areas shaded in red were not included to the Census Bureau's representation of the government's boundary. As a result, this affects the government's housing and population account, which could affect the allocation of federal funding to this community. Excuse me. So we have a BAS response viewer that shows a participant, we have the BAS response viewer that shows a participant the status of their government. This is updated from the responses received from our online forms, emails, and phone calls. You can see responses at the state, county, or minor civil division / incorporated place level. You can use the magnifying glass to search for your exact government. The responses include received submission, responded with changes, awaiting submission, responded with no changes, and no responses. And once again, we'll be doing a demo of the website later, and we'll show you how to access these viewers. All right, so now we're going to talk about submission methods. Earlier, we mentioned there are 4 ways that partners can provide us with boundary updates. These options are available to all participants in the online BAS annual response form when you indicate there are boundary or street updates required. So we'll talk briefly about each submission method in the next series of slides. All right, first, we're going to talk about the BAS Partnership Toolbox. We created the toolbox to ease the burden of creating change files on BAS participants. It allows partners to create their submission in ArcGIS Pro. With the BAS Partnership Toolbox, you can download the toolbox directly from the BAS website, automatically download Census Bureau partnership shapefiles, import local government boundary data, and create boundary updates using automated geoprocessing tools that compare your data with the Census Bureau's data. Update required fields needed for legal changes. This includes the authorization type, documentation number, and effective date. Also including legal documentation in PDF format can be included with your submission but are not required. Let's see, the BAS Partnership Toolbox can also create additional change layers for street and census designated places. Review change layers to validate all required attribution, and export standardized shapefiles into zip format for upload into our secure web incoming module. For the best results, it's recommended to use the BAS Partnership Toolbox in ArcGIS 3.0 or greater. And later on after the break, we will be providing a demonstration of the BAS Partnership Toolbox and kind of give a little more detail on this. Another option for response is called GUPS Web. GUPS stands for the Geographic Update Partnership Software, which is a customized web-based GIS application which requires no software download or installation. So with GUPS Web, you can collaborate with other program participants on your BAS updates. You can add others to your project as an editor or guest with read-only capability. Excuse me. You can import boundary data to automatically create boundary updates. GUPS Web uses geoprocessing to create differences between your local boundary data and the Census Bureau's representation of your boundary. Using this automated boundary review tool, will give you access to the boundary review, to the boundary review tools where you can see potential legal changes, update attribution, and dismiss insignificant polygons. GUPS Web can also, with GUPS Web, you can also manually create and boundary and street updates. The manual boundary updates are only available to counties, minor civil divisions, and incorporated places in the 2025 BAS, and we hope to expand some of that functionality for the 2026 BAS. With GUPS Web, you can also submit standardized updates directly to the Census Bureau. You can bypass the SWIM module, which is the secure web incoming module, and you can submit your updates directly to the Census Bureau. And we'll also be providing a demonstration of GUPS Web after the break coming up shortly. So we just talked about GUPS Web, but there's also a GUPS desktop application, which you can download. So the GUPS desktop is a customized standalone and installable GIS developed in QGIS. It is available for download on the BAS website and is completely free. So with the downloadable version of GUPS, you can manually create boundary, street, and census designated manually create boundaries, street, and census designated place updates using customized tools available in the application. You're also able to assign legal information to legal boundary changes, and optionally attach legal documentation, and you can export as a zip to upload into our SWIM module. We are not providing a demo of the GUPS desktop application today, but you can find detailed information and instructional videos on the BAS website. And once again, we will be providing an overview of the BAS website shortly. Also, we have Paper BAS. Paper BAS is designated for participants who prefer to update their boundary on paper maps rather than using one of the previously mentioned digital options. With paper BAS maps, you can annotate their boundary updates directly on the map using colored pencils provided. You must also include the authorization type, documentation number, and effective date directly on the map. Copies of the legal documents can be included, but are not required. With paper BAS, you can also annotate street updates directly on the map. This includes new streets, streets that no longer exist, and streets that are named incorrectly. With paper BAS maps, you can also return the maps with updates using the posted paged envelope provided with your materials. Instructions and materials for annotating updates can also be found on the BAS website, which we will be going over shortly. Alrighty, so just a little bit about returning updates. Participants using the Boundary and Annexation Survey Partnership Toolbox or the Geographic Update Partnership software download options must use the Secure Web Incoming module to submit updates back to the Census Bureau. The Secure Web Incoming module is also commonly referred to as SWIM, and SWIM is the official web portal for uploading materials to the Census Bureau and is the only secure method for submitting digital files. Due to security reasons, we cannot accept any files sent through email or file transfer protocol websites. So we can't do anything like Dropbox or Google Drive or anything like that. It has to be submitted through SWIM. GUPS Web will still send GUPS Web will send the submission directly to us without the user having to upload files to SWIM. So that's a little benefit of the GUPS Web. And then once again, participants using paper maps should return all annotated maps. Those are maps with updates using the postage page returned envelope with all your materials. And just a little more information on the Secure Web Incoming module. Participants who have previously logged in or previously submitted to BAS or another Census Bureau partnership program can log into their existing SWIM accounts using their email address and password. Please note that both your email address and password are going to be case sensitive. So just be mindful of that as you're entering your email and password. Participants who, if it's been a couple years since you've done a submission for a program, maybe you forgot your password. Fortunately, right on the the homepage, there's going to be a forgot your password section, so you can open that up and reset it. Now, if you're a first-time participant, participants who do not have accounts will be able to work with Census Bureau staff to set up an account. There's a string of numbers that you'll receive. It's called a SWIM token, but basically this is a unique string of numbers that will be sent to the BAS contact listed on the annual response form. And this SWIM token, string of numbers will be utilized during the account registration process. And please note that it'll take 5 days to process any updates to the BAS contact and whatnot. All right. So now I'm going to turn things over to my coworker Lauren, and she is going to provide you with a demonstration of the BAS website and all of the good materials and functionality and resources that are stored within it.
I'm going to cover the BAS website and some of the highlights that you can find there. So to find the BAS, most of what you need to complete your submission and respond to the BAS or to respond to BAS can be found right on this page directly. There's a couple of exceptions, but most of what you're gonna need is on this page. So for starters, I know Mike already covered it, so I'm not going to go through the response form, but you can find a link to the response form here. It's the very first link at the top of the page, just to make things easy for you. As I said, Mike already went through it, so we're not going to go through step by step. But we just wanted to let y'all know that it is right here for you at the very top. The next link that you'll find on the BAS website is the participation and response viewer. Again, Mike already showed a little bit of the functionality here earlier, but this is a viewer that you can check both to see your participation status for your government and also to see the status of your response for your government. So this page will automatically update the symbology as you pan and zoom in. So for starters, I'm going to zoom in just to show you how things can change as you're moving around the map. And the symbology legend, or the legend for the symbology, is over here to tell you what kind of partnership your government might participate in. So for example, North Carolina has many county BAS agreements currently. So you're going to see a mix of blue and yellow entities. And then, for example, states like Tennessee that have a state agreement, all the governments in Tennessee will show up in this pink color. And as I mentioned, you can zoom in and see more information about each city or government as you zoom in. If you're curious about whether we've received your submission, where it's at in the process, you can always come over here and check the response status map. It maintains the zoom level you were at on the other map if that's something you were curious about. Pretty much if it's yellow, we have not received a response yet. If it is light green, they have responded with no changes. And if it's a dark green, or the darkest green is they have submitted their changes and we have received them. There's also a green in the middle here for responded with changes, and we are awaiting the submission. You'll notice we also have similar symbology for tribal entities as well. And you'll be able to see that on the map. All right, I'm going to go back to the BAS website at this point. Hopefully, there we go. The next link I wanted to draw your attention to was the BAS videos link. At this link, you can find our video series that we've done for an intro to BAS, videos for how to use GUPS, and we are working on videos for how to use GUPS Web. We also have videos for tribal BAS, And this is also where you will find recordings of previous BAS webinars. So right now we have the 2024 BAS webinar. This will be replaced with a 2025 webinar as soon as it's available. All right. Next link of interest will be your response methods link. Coming here, you will find all of the methods you can use to respond to BAS. They're grouped here at the bottom of the page, and clicking on each one will expand the text so you can learn about each option. If you are interested in learning more about each option, you can also navigate to that specific web page to learn more about the response options or that specific response option. All right, I'm going to skip down a little bit. These other links for the schedule will tell you due dates and anything else relevant for BAS that you might need to know. And then if you've misplaced your how-to guide, you can also find your how-to guides here. Great. If we keep scrolling down, you'll encounter the 2025 BAS maps. This link will take you to an interface where you can actually download a PDF version of a map for your government. They can be quite large, so just be patient when accessing them. These maps you can use to print out if you would like a reference, or some people will use them to mark up their changes when they don't need a paper map, they just want a map to mark up via like Adobe. Okay, the next link you'll find is the 2025 BAS Partnership Shapefiles link. This is handy if you want to have all the partnership shapefiles for your own GIS, if you just want to review boundaries, or if you're curious about what we have on file, but you aren't ready to download the partnership toolbox. For what it's worth, the partnership toolbox will automate the download of these shapefiles, though sometimes the tool to download the shapefiles can be blocked by firewall or other security settings. So we recommend using this download option for those kinds of error messages. And for that, you would come in here, you'd select your state, and then you could select any up to 5 counties that you are interested in downloading and click the submit button, and it will download a zip file with all of the information you need for the partnership toolbox to work or for you to view. Another handy tool we have is TigerWeb. This does take you to a separate section of the Census Bureau website. TigerWeb is handy if you want to be able to view your boundary in a web map without getting into getting access to GUPSWeb. You can come to TigerWeb and either navigate to your boundary or search, or navigate to your government or search for your government to view the boundary with imagery and edges that we have in our data. We're not going to do a full TigerWeb demo, but if anyone is interested in that, we can add one on at the end. Just let us know that you're interested in that. At this point, I'm going to scroll back up and I'm going to point y'all to the Contact Us link on the left-hand side of the page. This is a good place to go if you have questions, concerns, any comments, either about BAS or other programs that the Census Bureau conducts. You can find relevant phone numbers and email addresses for any questions you'd like to ask. You can point them towards these phone numbers and emails addresses as they apply. All right. I think I've covered everything I was going to cover for the website at this point.
Welcome back, and welcome to part 2 of the 2025 Boundary and Annexation Survey webinar. Now we're going to have some fun getting into the live demonstration portion of the webinar. And to start things off, we're going to have Lauren come back and do an overview of the partnership toolbox and then an overview of SWIM. Then our coworker Maria will provide an overview of the GUPS web. And then lastly, I will give a sneak peek of the new Geography Division Partner Portal, which we will start using next year for the BAS. But without further ado, I will turn things over to Lauren.
So I'm going to go over how to get the BAS Partnership Toolbox, how to set it up, and how to create your submission and submit it through SWIM. So, as I mentioned earlier, we can get the BAS partnership tools through our response methods page. I went ahead and clicked on the partnership toolbox, which our web page, which brought me here. To get the tools, you will click on this link to download the BAS partnership toolbox. It might take a minute to download, so I've already pre-downloaded it. When it finishes, you will see a zip file called the BAS Partnership Toolbox Pro, and you'll go ahead and extract that zip file onto a local drive, a network drive, or anywhere where you have read-write access. Inside that folder, you'll find a DBAS folder, and inside the DBAS folder, you will find our standardized folder structure. We do ask that you don't alter the folder structure once you start working on your project, because some of our tools are dependent on this being set up in a particular way. Within this folder, you'll find a projects folder, which should be empty. This is where you're going to create your projects. You'll have a setup folder, which contains all of the tools and toolboxes, templates, layers that you will need to actually create your submission. You'll find the how-to guide in PDF form. And then you'll also have a change log here that just lists all the changes we've made over the years. And that'll help you if you need to know which version of the toolbox you have to know if you have the most recent version. This should be the most recent version. All right. Now, once you've downloaded it and you have it on a drive that you can work on, you can go ahead and open Arc Pro. I want to just make this note, since last year we had a toolbox that was available for ArcGIS Desktop. We are no longer supporting ArcGIS Desktop for the partnership toolbox. If you still have desktop and are using tools from a previous year that work in desktop, you can use them, but we are not supporting it. If you send error messages, we have limited troubleshooting capabilities for anyone still using desktop at this point, since desktop is no longer supported at the Census Bureau. All right. Now that I've covered that caveat, we'll get into working on your submission. So to create your submission, we are going to find that folder that we put the toolbox in. We'll go ahead and enter this projects folder. And I thought I deleted this folder already. I'm going to copy that information and delete that folder. We are going to select this projects folder as our new project location and click OK. And then for the new project name, you want to use the BAS ID of your entity. For this entity, I am using a city in Georgia. You can find your BAS ID listed in your annual response email. It should be in the subject line or in the body of the email. You're also able to look up your BAS ID on the BAS website, and if you're having trouble locating your BAS ID, you can always email GeoBAS or call our 800 number, and we can walk you through finding your BAS ID. All right. The last thing I wanted to cover for this step is to go ahead and make sure that this box is checked to create a folder for the local project. That'll just make sure everything gets put in the right place and is grouped together. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK so I can make my project. All right, so now we have a blank project. One of the things we are going to do first is add the partner toolbox. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to that setup folder that I showed you before. And I'm going to add the partnership BAS Toolbox Pro to my project. And then I like to go ahead and set it as the default just to make sure it doesn't get accidentally deleted or removed or anything like that. Okay, so at this point you're ready to start working on your project. You can see we have 4 tools currently in the partnership toolbox that can walk you through all the stages of your submission. 2 of them are technically optional. So you have to run the project setup tool. The project setup tool will download your data, and if you're ready to create changes, it will create your changes for you in the same step. All right, so it's going to automatically pull your BAS ID from the name of your project, which is why we make sure to tell y'all to create your project with your BAS ID as the first step. It just saves time later on by automatically having that information in the project. To automatically go out and get your data, you can use the data downloader option by setting this to yes. If for whatever reason you get an error when using this data downloader, or if you know that your IT folks have blocked FTP access to the Census Bureau or any kind of automated downloads, you can always use our offline option by selecting no and inputting a path to the partnership shapefile zip files that you downloaded from the from the BAS website. For this, I'm going to say yes and use the data downloader. And then I'm not quite ready to make my changes at this point, so I am going to choose the option to just download my data. So this option allows me to download the Census Bureau data and view what we have already on file before I even try and make any changes to my entity. So I'm going to open the details so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on right now. Right now, it's going out to the Census Bureau website, the Census Bureau FTP website, and downloading all our partnership data that we have for this BAS ID. The partnership data, as you saw, is kind of divided up by county. So if your place is, or if your city is in multiple counties, you can always, it's going to automatically pull in that information for you. This city is only in one county, so we don't have to go out and get multiple counties, but if you did, you would see the multiple records showing up in your menu here. Now, at this point, it's gone out, it's collected all the data, and it has formatted my project so that I can see the data we have on file at the Census Bureau. So the city I'm working on is Hampton, Georgia. And at this point, like you can zoom in on it, you can see the roads we have on file. If you have imagery that you want to pull in, you can pull in imagery. You can pull in any other data layers you have that you are interested in, just to kind of view what we have and compare it with what you have as well. Um, this is also a good time to open up our data and confirm that we have the correct information on file for the name of the city, or that it at least matches what you have in your data. That's going to be important later. All right, so I'm going to go back to the partner toolbox. Since I didn't create changes, I do need to run the step 2 create changes tool. If I had done that in if I had created my changes in step 1 and I didn't have any other changes to make, I don't have to run this tool again. This is just for folks who didn't create changes in the first step, or who have multiple levels of geography they want to create changes for. Say you're a county, you're responding for the places within your county, but you also have county boundary updates. You can do those separately. All right, so to use the create changes tool, it looks similar to the first step with a couple of slight differences. We don't need to go get the data because it already exists in the geodatabase. We just need to tell it what level of geography we want to create changes for, where our local boundary file is, and the name field in that local boundary file, or the field that has name data in it in that local boundary file. So that's the field that should contain something that matches the data we have on file in our name field. So I'm expecting to find something that says Hampton in this local boundary file. So I'm going to go ahead and select incorporated place. I did want to mention real quick that if you do have changes to CDPs or linear features, you can create changes for those data layers. They do work slightly differently. They will not automatically create changes for either of these. But it will create a data layer with the correct schema we're expecting, and you can manually create changes to those data layers. All right, I'm going to pull in my local boundary file. And new for this year, we actually changed it. So instead of having to manually enter your name field, you can actually there's actually a drop down now that will get the fields within that shapefile that you can select from. So I'm going to pick my name field, and then I'm going to hit run. And this is going to now compare the two files with each other and create changes between them. So if I had more than one entity here, it would show multiple lines for each city that was being checked. Another thing that it does automatically, depending on your licensing level, we attempt to remove any slivers from your submission automatically. So slivers are any changes that are less than about 15 to 30 feet in width that would potentially remove a relationship we already have in place with some kind of linear feature in our data. So for example, like part of this change you could call a sliver potentially because it's along a road and we want to keep our data snapped to the road. All right. I forgot to mention this as well. It will automatically pull in the symbology as well for your change types to make them a little easier to identify and to find on the map. So for this city, I'm going to, just for example, zoom to an area where I know I have a legal change. So I'm going to go ahead and select this polygon and view the attribution for it. And at this point, I can actually enter the legal information we need to accept the change. So Mike mentioned this earlier. For our changes, we do require that you fill in the change type, the effective date, the authorization type, the document number, and since we're in Georgia, we also require the area field to be populated. So I'm going to show you real quick how you can update that information um, just in case, uh, so that we will accept the changes. So everything when it gets created is coded as a B, which is we um, refer to those as boundary corrections. Since this looks like a large annexation, I'm going to go ahead and change this to an A, which stands for annexation, or if you're working on a tribal entity, it can stand for addition. I'll go ahead and enter an effective date. From last year, and then an authorization type and a document number. And like I said, because this is Georgia, we do have to enter an area as well, but that's not a required field for other states. All right. When I hit enter and when the changes commit, it updates the symbology on the map as well, so you can see that. There are some like little slivers, it looks like, coming off this polygon. You can go ahead and remove these if you want. Otherwise, we will go through and clean up the data when we get it on our end. It looks like there might be a couple other polygons here that are legal changes, so I'm just going to go ahead and enter a couple of dates just to kind of show you again the process for updating this information. All right. When you're happy with your submission, you can, and especially if you've changed any of your attributes, you can now run the attribute check tool. If you run the attribute check tool without changing any of your attributes, it's going to tell you there's no errors, or it should tell you there's no errors. But if you have made any changes, we recommend you run the attribute check tool just to make sure that your fields have all been correctly filled out. This tool requires you to select the change file being looked at and then what level of geography that change file is for. And then we do ask that you indicate if a file is in Georgia so that it knows to check the area field as well for that file. I can run this. It's going to show up with no errors, but I can kind of show you. That's what the inputs look like. I don't believe this actually has any output messages at this time. It just lets you know when it's complete. And then if you go back to your folder for your project and refresh it, you'll now see a CSV file here that you can open as a table, or you can join it to the changes based on the FID field if there are records in it. This one doesn't have any records because there are no errors. And that's the goal, is that for there to be no errors in the attribute check when you run it. Again, the attribute check is a tool that's optional. You really don't need to run it unless you changed any data in the attribute field. If you didn't change anything and it's all boundary corrections, you can skip the attribute check tool. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save my changes before I show you the last tool. The last tool is the export submission files tool. This tool is meant to pull in everything that we need to actually process your submission once we receive it, and put it in a zip file. And then you can take that zip file and put it into SWIM, and it should contain everything we need already. there's a couple of inputs here that are actually most of these inputs here are optional, but if you are willing to provide them, feel free to provide them. So first example, we have parcel data. You can include parcels for your city or county if you'd like. Sometimes the parcels are huge, so don't feel obligated to submit them if you can't fit them in one zip file. That's okay. We totally understand. They're more for our reference. Same for streets. If you have a street centerline file, you can submit that centerline file here as well. If you have PDFs or maps that go with your legal changes, you can include them here in your additional files. This is really helpful when you have lots of changes, or if we need to, or if it's unclear where like a change should be split because part of it's a boundary correction. Feel free to include maps, PDFs of ordinances, anything that you feel like would be helpful for us to process your file. The last fields here are contact information updates for either your BAS contact or whomever is creating the submission. Please include your first and last name and also your full street address, including the city, state, and zip code if you are filling in this contact information. We use this information to keep our contacts database up to date. It also helps us figure out who to contact if we do have questions about your submission. Sometimes the BAS contact is a different person than the person who actually created the changes. So it just keeps us in the loop on who to actually talk to if we have questions. So once you've filled this out, you can click the Run button and it will automatically launch SWIM if that functionality is not blocked by your IT department. Sometimes it is. It's a very quick tool usually. At this point, I can actually show you what to do with SWIM and actually submit your changes. So at this point, I'll go ahead and log in to SWIM. I'm going to click Start a New Upload. You're going to select the Boundary and Annexation Survey. Click Next. And then you're going to indicate which BAS entity you're reporting for. So if you are a county respondent, you can select county. If you're responding for a place, you select place, and so on and so forth. So we'll go through the menus. We're going to select Georgia, and then we're going to scroll down, or I think we can type in the start of your city name so you can find it a little easier. Click Next. And then you can add your zip file at this point. I need to find it for you, sorry. To find that zip file, you'll go into your project folder, click on the BAS ID folder for the one you're working, and then it'll be named BAS TBX 25 underscore your BAS ID underscore return. This is the only thing you need to submit to us. This contains everything we need. That any change files that you created and any additional files you associated with it. As you can see, I'm hovering over it. You can see all the change in place files are in there and the parcel files are in there. You don't need to add anything else to it at this point unless you know you forgot something. It also has the contact information text file in there. Right, so we're going to upload. And then you can include a comment as well if you'd like. these comments are seen by whomever is receiving your submission. So we don't prefer that you put contact updates in this comment, but you can provide things like that, anything that you think might be helpful for accepting your submission. And when you're done, you'll click next, and I believe that submits it. So I'm not going to click next because I don't want to submit these changes for somebody. But that is how you use Swim. I'm actually going to back out and show y'all that if you have a Swim account, you can also see all of those submissions, the history of your submissions here. You can mark them to delete, or I believe you can download them. I'm not sure, actually. I'm not going to say that. If you have any submissions you didn't complete, you can also continue them. So if you wanted to come back to something later, you could click the continue button and come back to your download later or upload later. And that is the gist of Swim. Once you've submitted it to Swim, you don't have to do anything else unless you have more changes or are responding for another entity. We will let you know when we receive your submission by sending you an email. And with that, I believe I'm going to pass it over to Maria to go over GUPSWeb.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Maria, and I will be giving the GUPSWeb demonstration today. And if you called into a webinar last year, you may have seen me give a demonstration of the automated change creation. This year, I will be giving a demonstration of both the automated change creation and our new manual change creation. So, how to sign up for GUPSWeb? I think Mike covered this a little bit in his part of the presentation. There are two ways. One is by selecting GUPSWeb on the annual response form as your preferred participation method. And then the second way is to just email us at geo.bass@census.gov, and we will get you set up with an account. So once you've opted into GUPSWeb, you will receive an email from us that will help you through the process of setting up your account. And once you've logged in with your new account, you will see this dashboard here. All right, so what we're looking at here is the GUPSWeb dashboard. And this is kind of your main landing page for GUPSWeb. This is where you can manage users if you're a project owner, and where you can come to open up your new projects or existing projects. The first thing I would like to point out is our Help Center. So this is kind of your guide to using GUPSWeb. And you find it on the left-hand menu here, the little question mark that says Help Center. Once you click on that, it will open up the guide of how to use GUPSWeb. So this page here is getting started. This kind of goes through the process of setting up your account. Even if you don't have a GUPSWeb account, you can see this help page. So if you were curious, you could come check it out. And then for BASS specific guides, you're going to go to Program Area Support, and then the Boundary and Annexation Survey tools. And this is just like one big long page that kind of goes through everything I'm going to show you in this demo. So, and then you can fast forward to certain parts on the left here. And then also on the dashboard, before I get into opening a new project, I would like to show you how to invite users. So if you, so like a special aspect of GUPSWeb is that it allows you to collaborate with your colleagues on projects. So you can have multiple users in the application at the same time. Or different times just working on it. So if you are a project owner and you need to send it to your colleague for review or for further work, you're going to go up to User Management, Invite Users, and then you are going to start filling out this table on the left-hand side with the program. You're a project owner, and then you will select your BAS ID and then the existing project name and type in the invite users field, the email address for who you want to share this with. And there's a pre-filled email just explaining that you've been invited to a project, the links, and how to set up your account. Select the invite and that email will be sent to your colleague. All right, and then let's go ahead and get into the first demo for the automated change creation. If you're opening up a new project, you're going to go to the table on the left-hand side, select BAS as the program, type in your BAS ID or the government name, and then it will fill out a project ID for you, and you can select Open Project. For the sake of this demo, I already have a project created, so I'm going to go ahead and open that. All right, and once it opens, you're going to see like a large scale view of your government. So here we're looking at Corvallis City. It's an incorporated place. And I'm just going to kind of point through some of these features in GUPS Web since it is new to most folks. So on the top right-hand side here, we have a little notification bar showing you if there's any collaborators currently working in the project. Again, you can reach the Help Center on the left-hand side menu bar. Project management, this is an option if, for whatever reason, you need to delete your project. Maybe it was going the wrong direction or whatever, you need to delete it. That's fine. You have the option there. Dashboard is a way to exit your current project and get back to that main landing page where you can open new projects, invite users, etc. And then this will allow you to completely log out of GUPS Web. And then on the top part of that left-hand menu bar, you have your quick tools. So this here, let me do that again. So you can see it opens up a couple of the most commonly used like navigation tools and other tools that you would use in a GIS. So if you ever need to get back into the pan map cursor, you can do that by clicking on the hand. You can zoom in and out to your last view, next view. This is a very handy button. This is your add imagery button. So you click on that, it will add imagery to your project, and then you can remove it the exact same way. Zoom full will bring you back out to the extent of your project. Classic zoom in, zoom out, and then the ever important save and refresh button. So if you've been working, it's always smart to save. So this is where you'll find your save button under the quick tools. So the icon here is your layer legend, and this will bring you into the layers for your project. All these layers are editable, so you can change the symbology to be what you would prefer it to be. You can turn layers on and off. So here I'm going to turn off area landmark. It's a cleaner view. I don't need it for this project. And then if I'm going to zoom in, you notice roads are missing. So I'll open edges and that will load the roads. And then I mentioned you can change symbology. So here, if you right click, select properties, you can change the symbology. So I'm going to go ahead and update the roads to be something I can see other than yellow on yellow. And I'm going to make them pink. So there I can see them better. All right. Next on the toolbar is our import export options. So import reference shapefile. This is if you have just purely a reference shapefile that you want to look at in your project, you would go through the import reference shapefile here. This is not where you go to upload your shapefile to create the changes. So that's purely for reference. And then export, I'll go over this again at the end, but this is where you're going to submit to the Census Bureau. So you can bypass SWIM and all that. If you're using GUPS Web, you just click here, submit to Census and click submit. And then you have options to download the project files or export the map in whatever format you prefer. So those are all there for you to use. And then finally, here's our edit tools. So these get more in depth here. You've got several view tools option. You can use a measure tool here, add a scale bar, create bookmarks. A lot of your classic GIS tools are found here. Imagery, again, another option for adding your imagery, removing it. And then if you need different views of imagery for whatever reason, you have Google and Bing here. What you do is you select on that, and then you select an area on the map, and it opens a new window of that area. Selection tools are found here. And then this is the main star of the show, our edit tools. So this is where you're going to get into your automated change creation tools and your manual change creation tools. And the difference between those, really quickly, automated change creation is best used when you have a shapefile of your government already on hand. So if you have an updated shapefile for your government, use the automated change creation. It works very similarly to the ArcPro tool that Lauren just showed you. It creates the changes for you, and then you just go through and review them. And then modify area feature is our manual change creation tool. This is where you would go in and manually draw in the boundary updates on the map. So you'd be digitizing on the map itself. It's a really good alternative to if you're used to using paper and you don't have proprietary software for GIS. GUPS Web manual change creation is very useful. Okay. And then we have options here for adding and deleting linear features. I'll show you this during the manual change demo. So let's get right into the automated change creation. So that is upload file and create changes. I'll select that. A pop-up comes up to confirm that you want to use the automated change creation tool. So once I select that, it will expand the window on the left. And I'm just going to go through and follow the process here. So first I select the layer that I'm updating. That would be the incorporated place. And then I have to import my data. So I can do that either through a zip file or through uploading the components of what would be in a zip file. So in this little blurb here, it explains that you need the .shp, .shx, .dbf, and .prj files. So I'm going to go ahead. You could zip them all up and upload as a zip, but I'm just going to show you selecting the files. So I've got those 4 required files selected. I'll click open. You can see here it says it has my shape or my DBF and then the 3 more files. I'll select import. And once it imports those files, it's going to ask me to select a field to use in the data crosswalk. So It just needs to be a field that matches the census data. So there are several options. You can use state and place FIPS codes, NSIC codes, or name and legal description. So I'm going to go ahead and select the name and legal description, and then it's going to give you all the fields that are in the file that you uploaded, and then you will go and select the field that matches. So at that point, I would select create boundary changes. It warns you it might take some time. I'll click OK. And now it's essentially just like running a symmetrical difference and finding those areas, those gaps between the census boundary data and your data, and creating changes out of those spaces. So the tool ran successfully. I'll select OK. And then once I zoom out, you should be able to see where a lot of those changes are. Okay, and streets is not slowing it down too bad. So all these areas that you see highlighted in green are our changes. The lighter green are areas that are being removed from the boundary. The darker green is what's being added to the boundary. So at this point, I'm going to minimize the upload file, create changes menu, and you're going to go down to review tools and say boundary review. Select the layer that you're working with. So we're looking at incorporated place changes, select review, and it will open up your review table. And it looks very similar to your standard attribute table that you would view in any GIS. So what you are going to do at this point is you're going to run through each one of these changes, indicate if it's a legal change or a boundary correction, and then if it is a legal change, you will add the necessary documentation information that's required. So we'll run through these. And you can add imagery at any one point or not. I'll keep it on for this part. So this area here is being removed. I can see it as quite a large area. And as the Corvallis expert, I would say, yes, this is a de-annexation. So it is selected. And then I'm up here on the top row, I'm going to add legal information. It opens up this new window, and I will indicate which change type it is. So I'm selecting de-annexation. You have the option to upload an attachment, but it's not required. What is required is the exact same thing that Lauren showed you in the ArcPro demo. It's the document number, the authorization type, and then the effective date. Comments are optional. Once you have those three required fields entered, you can select confirm. And you can see that it populates the attribute table here with what you just entered. And then the next important step for GUPS Web is you have to either accept or dismiss each change. So I know this is what I want the de-annexation to look like. It has the required documentation information. I select accept, and it will process that and take it off the review table. If you wanted to go back and look at that, you can always go back to the filter, review status, and then you can select the accepted ones, and it will show you what it'll bring it back to the table here. So you can see that. All right, I'm going to move on to the next change. All right, here, I'm going to go ahead and call this a boundary correction, and that's what it defaults to here. You can see the change type field. There's a D for the de-annexation that I created, and then here it has B for boundary correction. I'm going to accept that change. And then for the sake of time, I'm going to go through the rest of these changes. I think there's only about 10 or so. I'm pretty sure the rest of them would be boundary corrections. So I'm going to go through and accept. And I will dismiss one for fun as well. So anything that you dismiss will not be submitted to the Census Bureau. So this one here, yeah, we could say for whatever reason, it looks like it follows the lot line better where it is currently. We can select dismiss, and that will take it off the table. And just reiterating what I'm doing, in order to submit your project, you have to go through each change and select accept or dismiss and add your required legal documentation information. I'll dismiss that one as well. Okay, this one I believe does look like an annexation. So I am going to add legal documentation information for this one. So I'm adding the document number, authorization type, and the required effective date. And then I have to accept it. Okay, almost done. I'm just going to accept all these as boundary corrections for the sake of time. And then once you've gone through, reviewed everything, I'm going to turn that accepted filter off so that you can see my table is empty. So once your table is empty, there's nothing left to review. You are ready to go ahead and submit your BAS submission. And how you do that is you're going to go back up to the import export tool, the up down arrow on the left-hand menu, go to export tools, select submit to census, and then click submit. Once you click submit, you will get a pop-up message saying, that's it, you've submitted to the census, thank you, and you're done with BAS for this year. I'm not going to do that because this is a live production file and I don't want to submit on behalf of the city. But it's as simple as that, just clicking submit. And at this point, I'm going to go back to the dashboard to show you the manual change creation tool. So I have a different project that I started for that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the edges for reference here. And the imagery. So I'm going up to quick tools and adding imagery here. And then I'm going to go back to, I'll keep the imagery off. It might be easier to see without it. Okay. So I'm going back to tools, edit tools, and the manual change creation is under modify area feature. And again, this is where I'm going in manually digitizing the boundary updates onto the map. So it will ask you to confirm manual change creation. And then I'm going to zoom into the area that I want to update. All right, so let's find an area here. And then I will use imagery as reference just. Okay, this looks like a good one to add. Okay, so I'm going to add in this neighborhood right here. And how you get started with the manual changes is you're going to select your geography. So I'm updating the incorporated place. Action is going to be an annexation. And then I'm going to select the place that I'm updating. So you do that by clicking on select target area. And then I click on the map and it will update or highlight the city that I'm working with here. So it's highlighted Charlestown. And then I'm going to select the draw polygon icon. And I'm going to start digitizing, starting with left clicks to create my edges. And then I will do a right click to finish my drawing. All right, so now that I've gone around and drawn my annexation, I will do a right click to complete. And since this is an annexation, I have to enter the required fields of document number, authorization type, and effective date. I'll select commit, and it will add that annexation to the map. So you can see there, it's an orange. If I wanted to draw in just a simple boundary correction, I'm going to go to Action, Boundary Correction, Add Area or Remove Area. I'll go ahead and remove area somewhere. We'll do a small edge. Oops. Okay. So let's do a small remove area. Again, I'm going to select my target area. It highlights the city. And then I select draw polygon. And so then I'm going to go in and same thing, do left clicks. And then I'm going to carve out that piece that I want to remove. And then do a right click to, oh, sorry, I think my mouth and my hands were doing different things. Okay. Let's start that drawing again. All right, and since this is just a boundary correction, I don't have to add anything else. I just select commit. And it created that polygon for me and removed it from the boundary. So you can do that as many times as needed. Once you've drawn in everything that you want to update, you can go down to review tools, and this is optional, but you can go to review tools, select the incorporated place manual changes, and review, and it will open up the attribute table that contains every change that you digitized for your project. So you can click through, just double check them, make sure it looks the way you want them to look. It has all the information that you need, and that's it. You don't have to accept or dismiss or anything. It's just straightforward like that. So reviewing is optional here. And I will go ahead and show you digitizing and removing a linear feature. So let's say, I don't have an example on the map, but we can pretend. Oh, wait, actually maybe have an example right here. Perfect. Okay. let me update the symbology on this one. So going to properties on edges, and I'm going to update the symbology so it's easier to see on top of your imagery here. While you're looking at my screen through the webinar, I think it's easier once you're looking at it yourself. Okay. All right, so you can see the roads in red now. And if you have to go through and update the roads, so here I'm going to digitize new roads, selecting add linear feature. And then on my cursor, there's a little X that will snap to existing roads or edges. And then I can draw in as needed. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in by doing left clicks here, my new road. Right click to complete. And it will pop up with this window, and I'm going to fill out the road's information. So for a neighborhood road, it's S1400, local neighborhood road. The road name, and then the suffix. So we've got Census Lane here. Simple as that. Click OK, and it will digitize that road for you. So you can see here we've got Census Lane. If for whatever reason you have to delete a road, it's as simple as selecting the delete linear feature. You'll left click on the road that you want to delete and do a right click to delete the road. And you also have options of modifying the linear feature, so you can update the road name with that method. Okay, so that's it for manual changes. And you're going to submit it the exact same way that I showed you before. You're going to go to the import tools, submit to census, and then select submit. And that's it. You're done with your submission for that year of BAS. And if you ever wanted to, your projects will be saved on this recent projects here. So you will be able to see your previous projects. And then another third reminder that the Help Center is always there if you have questions about how to use GUPS-Web. And then you can always reach out to us at geo.bas@census.gov if you have any issues or questions. And that wraps up the GUPS-Web demo. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to take a few minutes now, and then we'll open it up for questions, but we want to show off an application that we're developing. It's not going to be used for this cycle of BAS 2025. I just want to reiterate that one more time. This is not for BAS 2025, but for BAS 2026 and for other geographic partnership programs moving forward, we've been working on developing what we call the Geography Division Partner Portal. And this is going to be a new online application for participation in geographic partnership programs. Basically, it's a centralized information hub that provides access to Census Bureau geographic and statistical data, program invitations. So you'll be able to respond to your program invitation directly through the partner portal. You'll be able to go and see historical participation information for your governmental entity. You'll be able to correspond with Census Bureau geographers directly within the application, and you'll be able to view and update your contact information within this application. And basically, it just keeps you, our partners, informed of what's going on with geographic partnership programs, kind of at any given time. And let me just hit to the next slide here. So what are some of the benefits of this Geography Division partner portal? It's going to simplify the partner and the partner user experience. Business is conducted with partners through, the centralized communication platform That means, you can log in and all communication for your entity will be able to be viewed, within the communication module. And we'll take a look at this in a moment. And it's a self-service portal, designed to streamline response, participation, and submission process. And ultimately, it will reduce paper product creation and mailings for and costs for mailings. So I'm going to now show you. This is still being developed, so this is our test environment. But we just wanted to give you, something to look forward to for the next BAS cycle 2026 or any other partnership programs you might be participating in. But basically, this is the homepage of the partner portal. It will have a section where we post updates about programs and whatnot. Also, have some frequently asked questions. And then when you all are using it, you'll click the login button to get in there. But since we're in the test environment, I have a little bit of a different route. But basically, after you log in, you'll see all of the different entities that you're associated with. So usually, maybe you would just only see, most people probably have more of a one-to-one relationship, but it is possible that somebody could be the GIS person or the BAS respondent for one county in two places. So today we're going to be, we have kind of a test environment set up for Mud Lake City, Idaho. And this is our test environment, so it just takes a second to get loaded up now. But so basically, this is what we call the entity overview page. And so when you log into this, you'll see entity specific information. And we call each of these section containers. So we have 4 containers on the entity homepage. One is the communication summary. This is where you'll be able to correspond with and see correspondence between you and Census Bureau staff. Then we have the contacts, and this will list out, every contact associated with your entity. So right now, it's just showing 2 kind of fictitious contacts that we have in there. But in reality, you might see 5 or 6 different people with their positions, their emails, and phone numbers that are associated with your entity. Then further down, we have kind of a summary of what's going on with geographic partnership programs. So right now you can see that there's been no response to the BAS program, but we do see that Mud Lake City has submitted their submission, or that the Census Bureau has received the submission for the school district review program. And then lastly, you have a section that that we're able to send out important announcements and reminders. So, there's 3 webinars upcoming, or get ready to update your counties via BAS. But then what's cool is that for each of these containers, you can select, select it, and you'll be able to see, have a more interactive menu. So if you click on that communication module, you'll see what looks like an inbox. And what's cool about this is that this will show the correspondence for all of the contacts listed with your entity. So you'll be able to tell exactly what's going on for any program at any time, and you're able to add in folders to keep it organized, or kind of set up the inbox, either to mimic what your inbox is like or help it keep it sorted out for different programs or whatnot. But then we'll go back to the entity overview page, and I'll just show you. It's the same thing with contacts. So you can either look at organizational contacts or you can look at program contacts. So for example, with organizational contacts, you might want to know who's the HEO. So you can click on that and it will just show you, who's the HEO, or whatever is the, maybe you want to see if there's a tribal chair, or who's the state data center contact. Unfortunately, Mud Lake City doesn't have all of those set up in our test environment, but you can also search specifically, I want to see, who's the BAS contact, and we can see that, we have the fake name right here, but, then it shows you the BAS contact, and you can click on that, and you can choose to edit it and update it, or, kind of, it's great because you're able to make updates to the contacts directly through this portal. Now, if we go back to the entity overview page, the last thing I want to show you here is also just how you can see exactly what's going on with geographic partnership programs and your participation for your entity. So for example, I just clicked on the title of that container. Let me just go back and show you one more time. But yeah, if you click on, you can either go to the specific program you want to see, or you can go to the geographic partnership programs kind of overview page. So I'm looking at this stuff and, I think it looks good, but I want to find out more about BASS. We're talking about BASS today. BASS is the program at hand. So I can click on BASS, and this site contains all of the information that you would traditionally see on our public facing website. So, so that's just loading right now. So you'll have some general information about your entity, but you'll also have entity specific information. For example, we're at Mud Lake City, Idaho. We want to see, what's the historical participation, when, what years, maybe you're new there and you want to, see what the former BASS participationship was. So you can click on that and you can see that, no response yet for 2025. And there haven't been any responses since 2019. So you're able to find some great entity specific information there, as well as accessing your maps or your shape files, or general information about the BASS schedule or whatnot, information on GUPS and the BASS partnership toolbox, and kind of all that information that Lauren showed earlier on the BASS website that we currently have. But some of that information will also be contained in the partner portal moving forward when we start to implement it in 2026. And so that's kind of the demo I wanted to show you here. And I just want to stress one more time that, this information, or the partner portal, is not being used for this go around, but we will start using it for geographic partnership programs starting in 2026, or, later this year, but not for this BASS cycle. All right, then I want to just bring up my presentation one more time. And then just want to say, if anybody is interested, we are hoping that we'll be able to have some people help test the Geography Division Partner Portal. So if you are interested in testing the Geography Division Partner Portal, sometime throughout the rest of this year, please feel free to reach out to us at geo.outreach@census.gov if you are interested in learning more or even testing the Geography Division Partner Portal. And then just as we're getting towards the end of our slides here, we just want to show these resources for BASS support. There's a phone number, 1-800-972-5651. It is a toll-free number. Also, you can email us at geo.bass@census.gov, or you can utilize the website that Lauren showed off earlier before the break to see what resources or support is out there. And then most importantly, just want to say thank you for attending today. Once again, you can call us toll free at 1-800-972-5651, or email us at geo.bass@census.gov. And I think at this point, we would just like to, if there's any unanswered questions in the chat, or any questions that you still might have, we would just like to take the time now to get those questions answered. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for attending